Welcome to That's What She Said, where we'll spill the tea on women empowerment in the Great Lakes Bay region with your host, Christiana Malacara.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to That's What She Said with me, Christiana Malacara. Thank you so much for coming into this space of, just of empowerment, of all those feel good feelings on That's What She Said Day. So I've had a busy week. I don't know about you guys, but we're just this season of That's What She Said just launched, right? It just propelled into this new season, and guest after guest has been a show-stopping woman that I've been able to talk with. And in all of this, it makes me reflect on the idea of what what's the story? And when you have that story, how do you find your voice? How do you find that you have enough courage to be able to speak up, to share your story? And that's what I'm doing every week is I'm asking a woman from the Great Lakes Bay region to, hey, come around and share your story with us. I commend them 1000% for doing that each week, because being able to do that it's not a light or little task. There's a whole mindset that I ask my guests to sit in, and we exchange emails and coffee, and we haven't had wine yet, but who knows? And we have a great conversation before the conversation on air. But the conversation that we have on air is 100% genuine, and it's 100% for you, because these women have been able to step into themselves in a way of confidence and to be able to find their voice so that way they can share their story with you. So, thank you very much to all of my past guests, and thank you for tuning in, and thank you for my future guests, because if you are out there and you're listening or you're watching us right now, um you're just as important as the guest who's sitting across from me. So, again, my name is Christiana Malacara, and you're listening to That's What She Said on WSGW. So we have a couple things, a couple announcements here. We are now on Saturdays and Sundays. Before it was Sundays at 6 p.m., which is true, but we have added Saturdays at 8 a.m., which is fabulous. So you can tune in if you're an early bird or a late riser on a Saturday or Sunday. And always find us on the social media platforms. That's What She Said. In WSGW's Facebook page, we have Instagram, and we've also added some platforms to our podcast format before, and which is still true. We have Spotify, but we also added Apple Podcast and Audible. Enough of that. Let's dig deep into my next guest here, because she's an absolutely, just when I see her, she just glows. I don't know. I don't know. She must teleport from Florida or something, because the sunshine just radiates off of her. One of my favorite people, Miss Crystal Sanders. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Christiana, for having me. And thank you for the very, very kind words.
So do you teleport from Florida? Because
I wish I could say yes, but no. I feel a little drab right now due to this wonderful lack of sun weather.
I know. Vitamin D. It's so important. So, Crystal, the way that we met, I don't even know how we met. Now, I'm not bragging, but I meet a lot of people. How did we meet?
I believe I had heard of you many times over. Finally, at a breakfast, I approached you and said, hello.
Yeah.
And that's where it started.
That's where it started. Well, that's as easy as it is a hello. So, Crystal, can you introduce yourself to the community and how someone may know you?
Well, I am Crystal Sanders, and I am the volunteer coordinator with Underground Railroad. So I am out in the community at a lot of different events, speaking, looking to recruit volunteers. But I also love to talk about the work of our agency, who we are and what we do, and how people can get involved either as a volunteer or as one who may need our services.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about the organization itself?
Absolutely. Underground Railroad first started in the late 70s. We offer shelter and services to survivors of domestic and sexual violence, stalking, and trafficking. And though we have morphed, we have grown, we are in a new location, it is still the same root organization that we're here to help those in difficult situations and circumstances within usually intimate partner relationships.
And if we have a listener who just needed to hear that, where can they get a hold of you at?
Well, you certainly can call our crisis line, which is 989 755 0411. That is our crisis line. If you want to get a hold of me, myself, and I for volunteering or even to speak with me more about our programs and services, or to have me come and speak at maybe your meeting or at your place of business, you can call me at 989 399 0007 extension 105.
Okay, so what you're doing with the Underground Railroad is it's just as important as facilitating, right? These women, you're facilitating volunteers. What did you steering away? What did you do to lead you up to this position where you're like, hey, this is a big organization. We need a lot of people to make this work. I mean, this wasn't the first stepping stone. There was something before. What was that?
Well, personal experiences to some degree, but when I had secured my degree from Saginaw Valley, a little later in life, mind you, I began volunteering as a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate at the Child Abuse and Neglect Council. So I went through a wonderful training. I was sworn in by the family court judge that I would advocate on the best interest of children that were placed with me, not in my home or anything like that, but I was placed over these children to advocate for them with what was going on in their life, whether it was reports of child abuse or something else going on in the home. But I love that role. And then I got connected with Catherine Martinez, who was the former volunteer coordinator at CAN. And actually, she knew that I was looking for something very similar to the role that she filled there. And she directed me to Underground Railroad, telling me that they were hiring. So I took my little resume and I went over there and I talked to a former manager, Mary Sue Berry, and she hired me on the spot.
Wow. That's a lot. Okay, so for those women and men who are out there and listening, Catherine Martinez is an angel. She truly
Yes.
is. Big heart shout out to Catherine Martinez.
Absolutely. I agree.
So this task, being a CASA representative for youth, that's also a big task. Where was the like, yeah, I want to do that, and I want to do it as a volunteer. I mean, this isn't a paid position.
No,
This
it
is
is not.
volunteerism. So you're paying in time and in emotion and dedication, and even your family has to give you away for a little bit, right? Why did you want to do this?
Well, I really wanted to advocate for children, and they need a voice. I mean, we're talking sometimes these children are infants and they cannot speak for themselves, or they're very young and they may not have yet found the right words, or what they've experienced has caused them to draw inside and not want to speak and share. But when you, as a CASA, visit with the children on a regular basis and you develop somewhat of a relationship and you talk to them about what is going on in their life, they begin to open up. And then what you do is you just report back everything that you learn, that you interact with the children, you interact with the parents, you interact with the attorneys for both, you interact with, obviously individuals from child abuse and neglect that direct you through the process. But it's just advocating on behalf of those children. And why I wanted to advocate on behalf of children is because I had an experience in my youth where I was sexually assaulted by a neighbor's brother. And you clam up. You just hold everything in. I cried. My mom was asking me, what's wrong? What's wrong? And it was like, I couldn't tell her. I somehow blamed myself. Must have been something I did. And so what happened, Christiana, is something very similar happened to another close friend by the same individual. And when she came to me, and we're young here. We're first, second, maybe third grade.
Okay, wow.
And so she comes to me crying, telling me what she's just experienced. And that's when I said, enough. I have to swallow my pride, even at that young age, and we need to stop this. And I can remember just storming in the house and saying, Mom, we've got to do something. And that just kind of propelled me. That I just felt so empowered And that has just stayed right with me right into the position that I'm doing now. We have to be a voice. We can't be silent. When there's a wrong that needs to be righted, we need to speak up.
So it's that theory of see something, say something, and how
Yes.
important it is. So
Yes.
you're okay, we're going back in time here now, right? So you're a young girl and someone comes to confide in you. You're saying that at that time that was just like empowering. How did how did the shift go from clammed up, no, I don't want to talk about it, to I'm empowered because now I have someone with a similar situation? What did that? I know we're going back and maybe we can translate that into emotion now, but what did that feel like?
It kind of really, believe it or not, even at that young age, it opened my eyes to, because I didn't say something initially that could have possibly prevented this from recurring. I suddenly felt that I can't be quiet anymore because I don't want this happening to me or another person. And so something's got to be done. And I think that that is often even what happens in the work that we do now is, as someone shares their story with another, that I was helped by Underground Railroad, or I have been a help to others because of the help that I received. It's when we step out of our comfort zone, A, reach out for help, B, reach out to be a help, that we are going to really start seeing changes and we're going to make a difference in our communities.
Uh, I know the answer to this, but do you feel like you've made a difference in the lives of people here, women, children?
I certainly hope so. I really do, because I put all my heart into what I do, whether it's working with volunteers, whether it's talking about the work of our agency, whether it's just talking about my own experiences, personal. I mean, Christiana, we could go in so many different directions with this conversation. That is one incident. Another incident is, as a wife, as a young mother, I wasn't perfect and I made a lot of mistakes. And I kept thinking that with God and with time and everything, things were going to get right. Things were going to get worked out. And that didn't happen. And eventually what had to happen is I had to go talk to my doctor and say, I'm behaving in ways that are just not like me. Something's going on. How can you help? I was put on a little Prozac back then, and I'm not ashamed to say that, because you know what? It helped get me sorted out. It helped get my emotions calmed. It helped me to react differently toward my children, toward others. When you can't get a handle on your emotions and you need help, or you've experienced something beyond your control, don't hold it in. Seek that help. It's there. It's there.
As a spouse, you said you were doing and reacting and, reacting, right? In ways that were not normal. What started that?
Um, well, certain things within our relationship were happening at that time. And I'm a firstborn, only female, and I know you out there can relate to what I'm about to say, but I wanted to control situations and circumstances that I thought were within my control. I can change my husband, I can change certain behaviors, I can change certain situations and circumstances. And then when it came to our children, hey, I'm that firstborn, only female, and I kind of take the bull by the horns, and you're going to do what I say. And that doesn't always work in marriage
No.
relationships or as a parent. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So learning to, learning to recognize that. That's one thing that women have, and the more conversations I have like this, I'm learning women have a hard time recognizing when there's an issue within themselves, because we're so used to, wearing the many hats, having, having the laptop in one hand, stirring a pot of soup in the other, kid on the hip, vacuuming with another. How did we grow all these arms, right?
Right.
So for you, what was that pivotal moment where you're like, pause, Crystal, I need help right now. And it's not right here in this room. I need to seek it somewhere else. What was that pivotal moment for you?
For me, it truly was just really crossing the line as far as anger, disciplining, um, it was a difficult time. And because I couldn't get a handle on my emotions, though I thought I should be able to, as a woman, as a Christian, I shouldn't be battling with these issues and with this anger and sometimes fits of rage and things. And I just couldn't quite get a handle on it. And I wanted to fix. So I wanted to fix things in my relationship with my husband. I wanted to fix the kids, however you want to coin it or phrase it or whatever. And that people don't need fixing. They need love. They need love and guidance. That's what they need. And obviously, until I was really able to seek that help, that professional help, be put on a med that would relax me and ease the turmoil going on in my mind and in my emotions, was I able to really start thinking clearly and behaving differently and reacting differently to situations and circumstances beyond my control.
What was your faith journey at that time where you were having this internal fight?
Well, that's what made it tough. And maybe this is something else that some of our listeners can relate to, is
Yeah.
as a Christian, I thought, I've got God on my side. I've got the Holy Spirit within. Why can't I get a handle on the anger, the outburst, sometimes the fits of rage, the words that were coming out of my mouth? It just didn't mesh with the person who I identified myself as. And again, that all comes back to, hey, I can't get a handle on this. Things aren't right. I've got to figure out what I need to do differently. And for me, it was starting by recognizing I needed help. I needed to talk to somebody, maybe some medicine, whatever it is, but I needed help. Pride kept me from that. I finally had to swallow my pride and say, no, I cannot go on like this. I don't want to go on like this. I need help. And when I reached out for that help, what a difference it made.
So we're talking about self-help, essentially. So fairly recently, I can't remember who I was speaking with, but they had said to give yourself a self-evaluation. Just check in with you every once in a while. Do you do that?
Probably not as often as I should, to be honest. I do run 110 miles an hour like you, going a million different directions. But I do tend to have that time where I, maybe have that time in the Word, or just to meditate, to walk, to do whatever, to listen to wonderful podcasts. But you do need to slow down, and you need to self-evaluate. And when things aren't feeling right, when they're not looking right, when you're not sounding right, when you just feel off, reach out, ask for help, even if it's confide in somebody that you can trust.
I was just going to ask. So sometimes a lot of that is an internal reach, but it is important to lean on people during this difficult time for you that you did overcome. Who was in your life that you were able to lean on?
Well, sometimes you're acting and behaving in ways that you're almost embarrassed to share what you're doing, what you're saying with others. And so if you can relate to that, listener, that's a self-assessment moment. If you can't share with others how you're disciplining your children, how you're reacting to your husband, how you reacted to somebody that just cut you off in the grocery store with their cart or whatever, if you're not in a good space yourself, sometimes you feel like, how in the world am I going to share this with somebody? They're going to judge me. They're going to, condemn me, whatever the case might be. You have to move away from that. And you have to realize, no, I need to find somebody. Somebody's out there. And if it's not a friend or a family member, maybe it is a counselor or a pastor or someone that you can say, things are off and I need help. And that you can go into more detail and not feel that you're going to be judged.
Who was that person for you?
Well, for me, it ended up actually being my doctor.
Mm.
When I actually finally went to her and said, she's known me since high school. We went to school together. Okay. So she has known me for a very long time. And when I was able to go to her and say, Dr. Jane, I am not myself. I am acting in ways that I'm ashamed of. I fear that my kids are fearing me. My husband's fearing me. And I said, I need some help here. And she listened without judgment. And she said, let's try this and see how this works. And that's what she did. And so that little bitty pill made a huge difference.
Mhm.
But again, it's swallowing that pride and getting that help when you realize that things are off, that things aren't right.
Let's talk a little bit about judgment.
Mm.
Okay. I think I pushed a button there. So, we judge people. We judge ourselves. Where do you stand on that word of judgment? Like what comes to mind when I'm saying let's talk about judgment?
It's easy from the outside looking in to try to judge another based on what you see or how they react to you or treat others when you are not on the inside looking out, and it is so easy to pass judgment, but it's not as easy to step back. And as I like to say, but for the grace of God, there go I. So you have to sometimes think, wow, especially if it's somebody you've known a long time and you're really seeing a change in attitudes and behaviors and they're just not the person that you knew. Don't judge, be a friend and say, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? But I think that's just a big thing. Now, obviously, how can I even pass judgment on somebody that I don't even know? But we do it, don't we?
We do.
We do it based on appearance. We do it in so many ways.
We do.
And we have to stop. And again, but for the grace of God, there go I.
I really like that. And we're gonna pick up back on this conversation. So listeners, don't go too far. We have Crystal Sanders with us on That's What She Said. And stay tuned. We'll be back.
That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara is back. Now let's spill the tea.
Hi, I'm Christiana, and we're spilling tea. This is Christiana Malacara on That's What She Said, and I have Crystal Sanders with me. Just in this last segment, we were talking about, I started out the conversation by, hey, we need to find our voice. And Crystal is an advocate for so many people for so long in the Great Lakes Bay region to help them, one, find their voice, but two, to advocate for people who necessarily don't even have a voice. And that's, I'm just gonna be frank. That's sad that there's so many people that are right here in our backyard that don't have a voice. Have things to say, not a platform to say it on. Have something hurting, something happening, and don't feel the confidence to talk about it. There's so many ways that we can advocate for those without a voice. Women, children, minorities, those who just can't move. They're froze. They don't know. And I'll let her spill the tea. All right. We're back with Crystal Sanders. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing in that last segment. But you said a little something about, and you kind of just slid it in there. And you said, oh, I went back to school, but it was later in life. And then you went on to have this beautiful conversation. But let's reverse a little. You went back to school and you said later in life. Can you unpack that for us?
Absolutely. So I actually, following graduation from high school, I did go to school to be a dental assistant, and I worked as a dental assistant for a few years. And then I chose to be a stay-at-home mom, and I ran a daycare for a number of years. And so I decided probably about 95, so I was about 35. I said, you know what? I really want to go on to pursue my bachelor's, and I want to work in the human social services field because I want to be of help to others. And so that began my journey. I went to Delta to get my associate's degree. I went on to SVSU and earned my bachelor's degree in sociology. So I would tell you it was about a 10, 11-year journey, but start and don't stop until you achieve that goal, whatever it is.
Whatever it is. If it's going to school or anything else.
Yes.
You said you were 35 when you were like, hey, things got to shift. What happened in your life that you made that call to go back to school?
Well, honestly, I actually kind of laugh about it now, but I really thought that, at that time, that was a little bit ago, getting that bachelor's degree, I was going to just nail that great job, and it happened over time. It did. It happened over time, but things didn't just fall in my lap. But am I sorry that I did go back to school, that I did pursue that degree? Absolutely not. And I did it while being married and raising 4 children in their, pre and teen years. And they were very supportive. And, we had all those things. We had sports, we had everything going on. And I managed to carve out time to get a few hours of class in each week. So I didn't take a huge boatload of classes because obviously if it takes you 10, 11 years, you're just kind of moving at a snail's pace. But so many helps out there. The Pell Grant. Actually, when I was at SBSU, I was able to be awarded a grant. I actually worked for a professor, and that paid for like a semester or 2 of my college courses. So look for those resources again if you're wanting to return to school, because they're there.
4 kids, you're married, 35, and you're like, I'm going to go back to school. Why not? That's a tall order. There's a tall order. Like you said, sports. What else was happening? What was happening? Like, you're managing a household. You're basically a walking Wonder Woman at this point, right?
Well, believe it or not, I was actually running the daycare business out of my home at that time. So I was hiring staff to replace me when I would be out for a few hours taking classes. And then, of course, studying in the evening when all the children were in bed. And I want to share something else. And you want to talk about inclusion. When I stepped onto the Delta campus, I was nervous. I thought, are these young adults going to appreciate this middle-aged woman strolling around that campus, sitting in their college courses with them? And even when I was put in groups to work with them on projects, they were all so wonderful. And the same thing happened when I went to SBSU. I walked onto that campus and I was never made to feel like I didn't belong, whether I was in a class or walking around the campus, or I was in a group, I was in a sociology club, and I worked alongside those young 18, 19, 20-year-old students, and just as if I were a peer today. So it was a wonderful experience. So I encourage you, if you're on the fence and you're thinking about going back to school, do it. Do it. So many resources available for you as well.
And how long was this process for you?
It was about 10, 11 years.
I thought that's what you said, but I needed to hear that again. Okay.
Yes.
So now we're 40s and walking across the stage.
And getting my diploma.
How did that feel? What did your family feel?
Oh, my word. Well, as I said, there was a lot going on in my life at that time. So graduation was held on a day when there were ball tournaments and everything else. So my mom attended with me, my wonderful mother. And it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. My family, it's not that they weren't proud of me. They were. But there was my mom sitting in the audience. And like I said, don't do it for anybody else. Don't do it for anybody else's applaud. Do it for you. And you're never too old and it's never too late.
So mom was in the audience.
Yes.
Can you talk about mom?
Oh my gosh. I love my mom. She's amazing. She's currently living in Florida, getting ready to move back.
I knew there was there was Florida glow. So it's mom's teleporting the glow to you. Okay. All right. Yeah. We can get back. Okay. Mom's in Florida.
But my mom is amazing. Married young, started a family young, had started college, didn't complete it, did try to go back a few times, which I applaud her for. But she worked hard. She earned some amazing positions. She was at Saginaw General as the gift shop manager for years. So many may have remembered her. Then also, she also worked as the gift shop and guest services manager at the Saginaw Zoo after leaving Covenant. And she is just amazing. And I have to say, I probably learned a lot and became a lot of who I am because of her today.
What's something that moms pass along to you? Because that's an empowering thing when you can say, "My mom's pretty cool and she did a good job."
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful when you can say your mom is one of your very best friends. And she has been for a long time. And she's been with me through all the ups and downs, through the turbulent teen years and beyond. And she's just always stood by me, always supported me, always saw in me sometimes what I couldn't see. And she would really just really encourage me to draw that back out of me. Not walk away from me, not write me off, but just have patience with me and just help me to come full swing and come back a little more grounded. So she was just always there. She was just always a pillar, always a support, as was my dad, but he's been gone for about 21 years. But my mom has been a pillar in my life.
That's fantastic. Not many people can say that. And that's very fortunate to have almost that privilege to say, like, mom's
Right.
mom's here. She's been with me for so long. And, me myself as a mom, like, I hope, and maybe we can archive this, Jonathan. I hope when my daughter is 35, she'll be like, man, my mom was the best.
Right. Yes.
And that's an amazing thing for you to be able to say. So, for those listeners who are just tuning in, you're listening to That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara. And I have Crystal Sanders here from the Underground Railroad. And the Underground Railroad has its legacy, its roots so deep, just in the nation, but especially here in Saginaw County. And Crystal actually is a very, very important woman over there. She's in charge of all the volunteers. And an organization like this cannot function without having an ample amount of volunteers. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there and how are volunteers pivotal within this?
Well, every nonprofit operates on a budget, and that budget is used for very specific programming to pay staff wages, to keep the lights on. And so sometimes there's not a lot of extra in the budget for things like having walls painted and having rooms cleaned and having meals prepared and helping in the resale store and helping sorting donations in our safety and resource center where our shelter is located. So it's just having that help, that extra help. And I have had volunteers, individuals, and groups up to 100. Yes, 100 that have served in so many different capacities and just help. They come alongside us in the work we do, and they help us make the work easier.
When you just said that right now, there's a lot of passion in what you said. Why do you have such a passion for this position?
When this is what I never forget. Somebody comes to volunteer, whatever reason, why sometimes they have to, sometimes they want to, whatever the reason, they've come to our organization to volunteer. Sometimes it's a personal experience of their own. Sometimes it's something that they experienced in the family or a friend or a loved one. Whatever the case might be, I always remember that every volunteer is a potential advocate for our agency and for those served, because the more individuals know about the work of the agency, the programs and services offered, and how we help individuals in the community, they can be a voice. Do you know how many people still think of us as just a domestic violence shelter? And we are that and so much more. And so when individuals know the so much more, they can be a voice now for our agency and for those that may need our services. So I always remember that somebody may start as a volunteer, get their hours, and off they go, but they're going to go away. And they're going to go away as an advocate, not only for us, but for those that need our services and need to come to us and secure our services. So it's like it's just this wonderful cycle, this wonderful circle.
That's what I was envisioning too. So you're pouring into volunteers through the Underground Railroad. And when I picture this, and usually the analogy I use is, you're pouring into a vessel and then you send them off, right? And they're going to pour a little bit of that, onto everyone that they touch. Do you see that as an empowering act?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the really cool thing is, again, like I said, it's a circle because they pour into us. Volunteers pour into us and those that we serve. And then that helps to fill up both staff and, those that we serve. And then they can turn around and pour into others. Christiana, you said it so well. Every one of us pour into somebody and we receive from others. And that's just kind of how we help and empower one another. And like I said, I've had people sit across the table from me and thought they were ready to volunteer. And they start sharing their own personal story and the tears start to flow. And then I can direct them to, why don't you speak with an advocate? Why don't you meet with a therapist? I think we need a little more healing work in you before you can be looking to heal others. And, it's so well received because I just think sometimes, like I said, I think we all want to go out and take the world by the tail and turn things around, even as I did as a young girl. But it's like there has to be a right time and a right moment, and you have to be ready. You have to be ready.
How do you identify when you're ready?
I personally think that there is a sense of I'm ready. There's a sense of I can do this. There's a sense of you have to recognize your own space, your own place. And then once you see that you're in a good space or place, then you're ready to pour out. And I think sometimes if we put the cart before the horse and we're not quite at that point, that's when, like you say, the self-assessment, we need to step back and maybe, okay, you know what? Maybe I will go talk with that advocate or that therapist or go to a support group, get myself stronger so that then I'm in a better position to be of more help to another.
So in the first segment, you had mentioned an incident that occurred when you were a young girl and you started to become an advocate for yourself and those around you at a young age. And then in this segment, we bounced around and talked a little bit about your mom. So your mom was an advocate for you. Was that something that she instilled in you?
I really believe it was because she, she loved us unconditionally. She advocated for us. I also think too, just the era that she grew up in. Sometimes people didn't have the access to resources like we do today. And yes, they were there, but they were not as there weren't as many, they weren't as plentiful. So if things happened in that time period, similar to what we're experiencing today, maybe the resources weren't there. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, regardless of that, she still was our biggest cheerleader, my biggest support, my biggest advocate. And I think that truly did help me she set an example for me to follow for sure.
Okay, so I have a two-part question here is what are some of those values that you grew up with and are now passing along? And then the second question is how important is it to have a cheerleader?
Well, it's just really interesting because first and foremost, I want to say that my mom, like I said, married fairly young, started a family fairly young, didn't go to college, but she worked and she enjoyed working. But she was, she was our mom. She loved us. She poured into us every way that she could. And when I became a wife and mother, I stepped away from my career for a while. I wanted to be in the home. And she would sometimes say to me, are you really my daughter? Because I took a slightly different path. So just because you don't follow the same path as one before you doesn't mean that your values are different or anything else, because she instilled in me a love for family, a love for God, a love for serving, a love for just working. Because even if we're not outside the home, we're still working, and investing in those that are in the home.
So what are some of those traits that you pass along? The second part of the question was, how important is it to be a cheerleader? And as you were talking, I was thinking, Crystal's a cheerleader for me. And I feel so fortunate to have you in my corner. But for those listeners and the women who are like, what's a cheerleader? Why do I need to have this? I'm doing fine on my own, with my hustle and bustle I'm doing today. How can we, how can you convince them that it's okay? You need a cheerleader.
We all need a cheerleader. We all need somebody in our corner. We all need at least a good close friend. We all need to have some fun once in a while. We all need to have a shoulder to cry on. We all need to have somebody that can be a sounding board. Oh my word, you won't believe how I blew up at my kids last night. Oh my gosh, that's just not me. I feel so bad. Somebody that can listen, that can walk with you through the process. Again, maybe it's saying, I really feel off. I really feel, I'm getting my priorities out of whack. Maybe they can recommend somebody to listen to you, somebody professional, but sometimes it's just that listening ear, that friend. So we all need to be that cheerleader. We all need to be that one that says, hey, what's going on with you? Hey, you seem a little out of sorts. Hey, I haven't seen you around lately. And if I can just interject here, because this is a good point that you're making, is that individuals who are typically in abusive situations, is that if you have that close friend that the phone's not ringing anymore, they're not able to meet for coffee anymore, they're kind of, being, I guess, withdrawn or they're just not present anymore, you need to reach out to them. Don't wait. Make sure everything's okay. And sometimes just doing that might be all the help they need to say, I need help. Can you help me? Maybe I need to drive to Underground Railroad, or maybe I need to go see a counselor, or maybe I need to do something. But when people pull away that you are used to just, having those regular conversations with and hanging out with and going out with, and now all of a sudden that phone is going dead and you're just not seeing them. And instead of saying, well, I guess, they've moved on. No, reach out and find out what is going on.
And that goes
back. Be that cheerleader.
That goes back to what you were saying, was you really don't know what's going on the other side. When I asked you about judgment, you never really know what's happening on the other end.
Absolutely.
So for some time, you have been doing some amazing things, and that bears stress. To be frank, I'm in the same boat. It bears stress. What are some things that you do to kind of move through your day, to have the energy to have these heavy conversations?
I definitely, well, first of all, church is a very big part of my life. Family is a very big part of my life. And what's fun, and basically what I just spoke about, is I have a group of friends from high school that we reconnect at those class reunions. And we have just made it a choice that we're going to get together more often, whether it's 2-3 times a year, but we're not waiting for that every 4-year reunion or something like that. And that has put all of us in such a wonderful space. We've just been such a wonderful support for one another. So find that person, that group of friends that you can be real with, that you can be honest with, that you can reminisce about old times with, or make new memories with. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you have individuals in your corner. And it may not, it may be a male friend, a girlfriend. It doesn't matter. It just has to be somebody that you can trust and confide in and be real with.
What do you do for yourself?
Well, I try to fit in a little exercise and walking once in a while, some time in the Word and prayer. But it's just, even if it's just taking the time to just sit and relax, watch TV in the evening with my husband or something like that,
What is one piece of advice that you would give to someone in the Great Lakes Bay region?
Oh my goodness. You know what? It comes back to judgment, and it goes back to, but for the grace of God, there go I. Remember that. You just never know when you may find yourself walking in that person's shoes that you stood in judgment of. So just be one who extends grace and not judgment.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Crystal Sanders, and That's What She Said. We'll see you next week on That's What She Said Day.